Legend has it that 100 years ago, a top locksmith named Hans Wagner spent his life building 4 safes. No one on Earth could crack them because of their complex internal structure. He locked himself in the safes and sank into the sea, waiting for the man who could break them. 100 years later, a young man was born who called himself the King of Locks. He had a passion for lockpicking since he was a child. Until now, there was no lock he couldn't open. His target is the safe designed by Hans Wagner 100 years ago. But because he couldn't find the location of the safe, his lockpicking skills were stagnant. One day, he saw on his computer a lockpicking contest, claiming to be the most difficult lock in the world. Dieter thought it was Hans Wagner's safe, so he entered the contest. But when he arrived, he was disappointed. It was clearly not a Hans Wagner safe. But he didn't quit, and decided to give it a try. The people who came to compete were famous master locksmiths from all over the world. As the judge gave the word, everyone went to the safe. After a few minutes, a long-hair man was the first to unlock it. Then the second, the third. Now there was one last spot left. Dieter starts to push. He gently twisted the knob and listened carefully to the sound coming from the inside and opened the safe without any effort. He came to the first round, which was more difficult. But Dieter didn't take it seriously, watching others open it before he did. Soon he passed the second level. The third level of difficulty increased again. This safe is said to have a level of complexity inside the lock comparable to a national security system. Dieter looked at the long-hair man's expression and knew that this safe was really difficult to open compared to the first 2. But he still did not care, and chatted with that man. He chatted until there were 30 seconds left before he did it. This time he started to get serious. He opened the first lock with a gentle twist of his finger. Then he opened the second and third in the same way, until it was completely opened. To everyone's surprise, it took Dieter only 9 seconds to open such a complicated safe. The crowd was cheering, but then, a girl appeared in the crowd and caught Dieter's attention. He didn't expect that this girl would change his life. The next day the girl found Dieter. She pulled out a ring, a gold watch and a pistol from her body. She hadn't brought these things with her, but had taken them from 3 customers within 40 seconds of her entering the cafe. The girl, Star, is a thief. Her purpose was to get Dieter's lockpicking skills and get him to join her team. Although Dieter saw that she was pretty, he didn't say yes immediately. Star saw that he was worried and said she knew that their dream as locksmiths was to open Hans Wagner's safes, but they couldn't find where they were. And she knew where those safes were. Although Hans Wagner's safes are over 100 years old, 3 of them are still in service to the World Bank. Only the last one sank into the sea with Hans Wagner. Star left a message for him to come find her if he dares to challenge her, and she walked away. Dieter heard the news and immediately sat up. The reason he liked to pick locks was because of Hans Wagner's safes. The next day Dieter followed the address to Star's place. Here he met Star's other teammates. Top hacker Karina, with a hot body and great skills. Ryder Rolf, who can drift 108 times in 50 seconds. And Brad, the man of force, who had taken down 72 people with his bare hands without a scratch. And before that, several people have done 5 votes in a row. Each time successfully escaped. They didn't want to open the safe for the money, they just wanted the thrill of it. After they got to know each other, they set out. The first target was Paris. Before the operation, everyone checked their equipment. Only Dieter was confused. Because it was his first time to do this kind of thing, he was a bit nervous. But for the sake of his goal, Dieter went ahead with it. First, he disguised himself as a passerby and came to the bank to use the bathroom. Then Star took the security guard's keys when he opened the door. Once inside the bank, she claimed to be storing valuables. The manager lets her in and guards the door to avoid losing other customers' belongings. At this point, Karina enters the bank disguised as a noblewoman and uses a foreign language to attract the manager's attention. Because she had already found out that the manager was the only one in the bank who knew the language. Star and Dieter succeeded in meeting at this time. The 2 of them go to the bank's underground vault. Dieter is excited to finally see the safe he's been dreaming of. But he didn't realize that the safe was more complicated than he could have imagined. This man was cracking the bank safe. Although he was called a locksmith, he was more than a little nervous this time. Because the safe was designed by a top locksmith 100 years ago, the internal structure is extremely complicated. Dieter takes out his cell phone and picks a song to lighten the mood. Then he took off his shirt and stepped in front of the safe and turned the switch. At that moment, the inside of the safe also began to change. He put his ear to the ground and listened carefully to the movements of each link in the lock. He knew that one mistake and the safe would go into lockdown. After 2 minutes, Dieter finally cracked it. He pulled open the door. Inside, there was cash piled up. The two men were excited, but they weren't excited about having so much money. They were excited about having broken one of the 4 sacred locks from 100 years ago. They took a few token piles and quickly left the scene. The accomplices on the other side were ready to meet them, but during their escape, several of them were caught on surveillance. The police soon recognized them. Because they had committed 5 crimes in a row before this, they were already listed as the most wanted targets by the police. Based on the clues collected, the police deduced that their next target must be the other 3 of the 4 sacred locks. At this moment, they didn't know that they were being watched by the police. They were still celebrating to crack the safe. Dieter watched Star's dance and was instantly absorbed. After all this time together, he had already developed a crush on Star. But it was clear that Brad and Star had a special relationship. He came to Star's room at night. They talked about each other's past together. It turns out that Star's family is very rich in the area. His father was a famous real estate tycoon. Because of his busy business, Star was never cared for and had developed a knack for thievery since he was a child. After talking, the two of them worked out their next plan. The next day, they set out again for Prague. This time the target was clearly more difficult to approach than the last. The bank was surrounded by armed guards. In order not to be seen, Dieter enters the bank as a client with $1 million in his hand. Karina, on the outskirts of Silver Street, began to direct the whole process. Dieter walked inside the bank to a door and pretended to open it. On the other hand, Karina pressed the keypad. The iron door opened automatically. Then Star and Dieter met and entered the elevator. In the elevator, Dieter inadvertently asked about Star and Brad's relationship. Star said, "No relationship, just teammates who work together." But Brad, on the other side of the elevator, could hear them clearly. He was so angry that his face turned green. When the elevator opened, a guard stopped them. Star punched him without saying a word. Then another guard came up. Star was no slouch. Each punch hit the guard's face. Dieter was so scared that he couldn't breathe. Then they finally found Hans Wagner's second safe. After taking a breather, Dieter played music again to ease his mind. At Star's urging, Dieter began to move. He flicked the knob. This time the safe was far more complicated than the previous one. Dieter had just cracked the second one when it went wrong. The 3 locking plates were instantly sucked back in. Star says it's the safe self-protection mechanism. If you make one more mistake, the safe will be completely locked. What's worse, the security chief in the surveillance room noticed something strange when Dieter entered the door. The before and after images in the video were clearly inconsistent. They immediately chose to call Jay. Karina outside the bank soon realized that something was wrong. Seeing that the plan had failed, Brad put on his mask and prepared to stall for time. After entering the bank, he took down several guards and took control of the bank. Dieter finally settled down and started his second attempt. He gently turned the knob while listening carefully to every movement inside. Finally, he opened the first channel. Then the second one, the third one. The safe was successfully opened under the pressure of tension. The two of them hugged each other with excitement. As they forget themselves, Dieter is about to kiss them when a bell rings. Their teammates told them to evacuate. After escaping from the bank and facing the police behind them, Brad was standing at the back of the car, ready to pull someone out. In the nick of time, Star was finally pulled up. But just as Dieter climbed into the car, he was pushed out by Brad. The cops behind him immediately caught up with him. The man had just robbed the bank with his accomplice, but was pushed out of the car by his accomplice in the process of escape. The man grabbed a passerby's bike and started to run away. Before long, 2 police cars surrounded him. The man took advantage of the bike and the small size to escape from the gap. Following a side alley, he made his way to a railroad track and managed to escape by climbing onto a train. But he is not excited by his escape. Instead, he was saddened by the betrayal of his companion. He didn't expect to get along for so long, but in return, he was betrayed. On the other hand, Star had a fight with Brad for pushing Dieter off the train. After a long time together, she not only considered Dieter as family, but also had a crush on him. After a big fight, Star broke away from Brad and jumped off the bus alone. Not too far away, Karina also jumped out of the car one after another. She said she didn't want to be the next one to be betrayed and decided to die with Star. On the other hand, Dieter returns home, but to his surprise, Star and Karina are waiting for him at home. Star apologizes and says she won't work with Brad anymore. Dieter didn't blame her either. Then the 3 of them started to discuss a plan to break into Hans Wagner's third safe. But the bank where the third safe was kept was already full of guards. Because 2 of the bank safes had been broken into, so they had already planned a tight control. But one thing led to another. When the police approached the bank manager, he said that he had already received your notice to ship the safe out in advance. The police were confused. They hadn't notified the bank. It turns out that 2 hours earlier, Karina had hacked the bank and sent a fake message to Star and Dieter, posing as detectives, to transport the safe. But they didn't expect the police to figure it out so quickly. Now we have to crack it in the car. And this safe is far more difficult than the first 2. Inside the safe, there are 7 layers of encode combinations. A little carelessness will ruin everything. And it has to be cracked under bumpy conditions. This is also a great challenge for Dieter. He tried his best to calm himself down and start cracking. On the other hand, Brad and Rolf had also found out Star's coordinates. At the same time, Karina, who was fishing for a single, was caught by the police. Under police interrogation, Karina gave up a coordinate. Instead of giving up Star, she gave up Brad's location. At that time, Dieter in the car had already cracked the 6th level of the code. While breaking the 7th level, the car suddenly swerved and Dieter was almost thrown out of the car, causing the hooks inside the 7th level to fall out of place. After the car was stabilized, Dieter hammered the safe and unexpectedly got the hook in. Thus, they opened 3 of Hans Wagner's 4 safes. With time running out, the 2 men immediately prepared to pack up the contents and take them with them. But as soon as they got out of the car, they were confronted by Brad. Brad pulled out a gun and threatened them to hand over their stuff and pulled the trigger on Dieter in cold blood. But he didn't realize that the gun had been tampered with by Star before he left and no bullets could be fired. Star immediately pulled out his gun and pointed it at Brad. Dieter sees the tables turned and punches Brad in the face, only to have Brad bounce off his wrist. Before they left, they locked Brad in the car. The police arrived and managed to capture Brad. But when the 2 men were about to leave the game by boat, they were stopped by the police. Star immediately confronted the police with his gun and told them to let Dieter go, and she would stay. After all, Star was the most wanted criminal, so the police agreed to her request. After Star persuaded him to leave, Dieter left alone. He took out the passports and airline tickets that the 2 of them had prepared beforehand and recalled the moments he had spent with Star. Finally, 2 strangers found Dieter. They are the main actors of the Army of the Living Dead. They are going with Dieter to break the last of the 4 safes' Gotterdam ring. Soon Dieter will also meet Star when he breaks the 4th safe. The world will also be in ruins.